WWT presents Meet the Chief.
So hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Meet the Chief. I'm Tracy Byrne. I lead our global security go-to-market here at WWT, and I have two very awesome guests with us here today. So I have Erik Gaston from Tanium. He is their CIO and their VP of Global Engagement. Spent most of his career sitting in the seat of a CIO and CTO at large global organizations. And then we also have our very own Kate Kuehn, who is our Area Vice President of Cyber Advocacy here with us today. So we're super excited to get this conversation going and really hear from both of you on your perspectives in the market in this highly influx space and time that we're in. So welcome, team. Wonderful. Well, Erik, I kind of want to start off with my first question to you. It's been such a huge year in cyber for all of us, to say the least. And I know in your world, you spend so much of your time doing advisory work for CIOs and CISOs. Where there's a ton of tactical and strategic adoption of things like AI and many other new technologies. But what are some of the key areas that you're really focused in on with your clients today?
Thanks for having me, Tracy. I really glad to be here. It's a good question, right? It's such a mixed bag right now, and I think what it's really indicative of is there's so much change, but there's so much change sort of in the posture of companies. So I think, to your point, right, there's that traditional kind of hygiene side, so I think companies are still very focused on, have we done enough to kind of bring everything down, simplify as much as possible, right? So that's kind of that first thing is like, and a lot of that's driven by, are we spending every dollar appropriately, right? So, if we think what's driving it, it's coming down from the business and it's bleeding in there. So that whole hygiene, asset management, asset life cycle, software reclamation, ensuring that there's nothing out there, the one that got away, and then still sort of trying to get your arms around change management, right? Like, it's funny because, as a practitioner, you're always in that mode of you make a change and then you stand there and you go like, wow, I just contributed to all the problems that I already had. You go, every time something comes down, you add more to the pile. And I think that is something that everyone's still focused on. On the other side, the bigger picture, the strategic end, there's a lot more in the space of, how transformational can we be, right? And when we start to think about it, years ago, transformation complexity kept adding more and adding to the pile. Now it's all about simplification. And I think when customers, when we talk, they say, okay, I need to have fewer platforms that do more. So that's a bigger space. So we start to think about that. How do you future-proof those environments? And then lastly, I think what customers are really looking for is innovation. And that's where they come out. They say, we can't keep up with the pace of innovation and we need partners and companies to work with. They're going to bring us there. So that's really been I think the focus for right now. And it's a lot. It's like this pivotal point. And I feel like the messages are fairly consistent, but everyone has, the underlying, once you dig through the first the surface on it, it goes in a bunch of different directions.
Yeah, Erik, it's so interesting that you say that because really the foundation of any ability to innovate is having good hygiene and simplifying and making sure that you actually have visibility into your current environment, so you can have a clean foundation for what's coming next. And I'm sure, Kate, that you have these conversations all the time as well. And to kind of add to the pile of all of the new technology that our clients are really trying to consume right now, there's also so many changes happening right now just in the dynamics of both the market and right now just in this space of time. So we have obviously a new administration that has come in. There's looming changes to governance and compliance mandates. And then also we're just seeing a huge uptick in risk. So it's kind of a perfect storm. And Kate, I'd love to hear kind of your perspective on this and some of the things that you're really focused on, when you're doing your advisory work.
Yeah, Tracy, you bring a really good point. So, we are with a new administration right now, and there's a lot of question about what are going to be the changes, what are we going to see? And when I speak with boards, there's really 4 areas that we talk about. One is around misinformation, disinformation. And so how important is it to start paying attention to things like deepfake? What is the real threat from both an opportunity and a risk perspective that AI is bringing into the marketplace? What should we be thinking about with things like deepfake and AI coming in to be more malicious as we look at attack vectors? The second thing that we're hearing a lot about right now is insider threat. So how important is it both on the malicious insider threat and then also thinking about it from a mistake perspective? We're now living in a world of what I call digital risk, and cyber incident is no longer something that's just malicious. We now have malfunction. If something from an AI model goes down, goes sideways, what is the impact of that? We also have mistake. We saw last summer a software rollout all of a sudden go wrong, and we have to deal with it just in the same way we remediate breach. So how do boards start to prepare for that? How do we get back to the basics? Because we're so dependent on technology, and there's now a cyber component to all areas of technology, and sometimes now an AI component. And so this concept of digital risk is something that boards are really focusing on. How do we protect our insiders to ensure that they're not creating mistake, malfunction, or doing something malicious? And on the other side, how do we protect as threat actors come in? Third area that boards are really focusing on a lot is nation state. There's a lot of question from a compliance standpoint. There's also a lot of question about how much we'd be paying attention to the geopolitical tensions, what's really going on with the Chinese APTs that have been making the news, considered the typhoons, the Russian criminal gangs last year. How important is it to think about ransomware? What is the trend? We saw over a 200% uptick last year in ransomware. So how do we start to think about this holistically? From a compliance standpoint, we expect this year a couple of things. We do know there's bipartisan, bicameral support on looking again at a Consumer Data Privacy Act, doing something holistically, because the state level legislation is really, causing some fatigue in the industry. The second thing we see is AI being something that's very bipartisan, bicameral, as far as looking at education bills, thinking about how we can protect better in deepfake. We did see at the beginning of this administration kind of the pushback on the last Biden EO on AI, but we do expect more to come in some different areas on that lens. So as we think about all this, Erik's exactly right. The basics, hygiene, the last status I saw on it was that 82% or somewhere roughly around there of all attacks or mistake malfunction can be mitigated with having a solid core foundation. So I think you're going to see regulation look at simplification. I think you're going to see a lot of organizations talk about like tools rationalization. That's not necessarily a budget exercise. That's making sure that you're future-proofing, that what you set as that foundation has the ability to grow and expand as we accelerate technology.
Yeah, Kate, those are great points. And I feel like really at the core of what you're talking about is building resilience into the strategy. And it's so critical. Erik, I'd love to hear from you. It's not as though CISOs don't have enough on their plate already, but there's also market dynamics. So what are you seeing taking place right now that's kind of affecting how CISOs are making decisions?
Well, I think, really lately, it's been interesting that there's so much talk around M&A. And I think it's something that for many years sort of laid dormant. And I start to look at the dynamics there, how companies are growing, especially in this environment, right? There's still a lot of capital out there. Interest rates are high. People are, so there's sort of like, I think they're fairly bullish on the investments, but the other part of it is getting the most out of the investments we've made. And so when you start to look at that idea of, okay, we can no longer just accept having legal entities and P&L integration, but not overall technology and integration across the full stack. And then they start looking at that. I would say lately this whole notion of so to Kate's point, right? Like, where is it coming from? It's a board level conversation, and that's like really new. Like, I was almost surprised when I hear things around, what percent of every board has people who have cyber experience or has any kind of really good technical chops, let's say, to go after it. And I think I heard something like it's less than 2 or 3% of all publicly traded companies have anyone with any experience on their board. Yet it's the biggest risk now that the companies are carrying. And when they carry it in the form of companies that have been sort of underinvested or just kind of let to run out there, it starts to become a huge risk. So what we start seeing now is, how do I get visibility into these companies, understand the real-time risk profile? How do I start to bring this in and integrate not just pieces of the business, but start to look at, what kind of technologies scale across the entire enterprise, and where do we start to get, more bang for our buck, but also a real common direction, right? So for the company. The other thing that I'm seeing too is divestiture. And that's a whole nother, so Kate was talking about insider threats. When you're coming in, when you're trying to get a company moved out, your insider threats become huge, right? So you're starting to untangle things, right, that have been working together, and you want to make sure that you responsibly separate your entities. At that point, you start to look inside, because the biggest threat to it's going to be something that you're carrying, or it's going to be people, it's going to be disgruntled employees, it's going to be whatever goes with that. And I think that's becoming a big one. The other, obviously, and I mean, it's the 800-pound gorilla in the room, is AI, automation. And AI, I think, is interesting because it's gone through this hype cycle of everyone came in and everyone was like, wow, AI, it's going to solve world peace. And we're going to have all this great stuff. And then, and it's not following any other pattern, like any other technological advancements follow the same pattern. Look at, something like containerization, right? Everyone thought, oh, we'll build our own. I was in a large bank at the time. We had this dumb idea that we were going to build our own, big container farm. We were going to commercialize our own products. And I was like, no, we're not. And what ended up happening? Went through a big hype cycle. Everything sort of slowed down. We hit a period of prohibition, and then the industry started kind of coming together and talking about standards and things like that. And then, containers, it was, Docker and Kubernetes comes to the top, and everyone goes in that direction. And it has a lot to do with, security. It has to do with how much can you build into it. We're seeing that now, right? Now companies they've kind of hit this prohibitionary period with AI. They're telling everyone, like, you're not using it, no way, no how. But then they look at it and they go, well, we have no ability to innovate or to scale or to keep up with our customer demands. So all the stuff that's driving this is now pushing in the direction of going, okay, we're going to have to start understanding more about this in the standards. And for that, we also have to go to the market, and we have to partner with customers that are innovating in the space, who are best in class, and they're going to help us on that journey. And then the other market dynamic I'll just say is, the whole AI generated cyber attacks and the creation of noise and things like that. That's a big concern right now. Being able to sort of use AI on AI, right? How do we start to leverage these capabilities to sort of combat them at the same time? And I think that's a big concern. So those are kind of the big spaces I'm seeing.
Erik, I think everything that you were just talking about really underscores the importance of what you and Kate do every day. Not only are the demands on the CIO and the CISO so immense right now, but also it's so important for you guys to kind of enter in really at that origination of planning stage at the board level, because I think we all know when we're in an area, like you said, where there's so few cybersecurity folks that are sitting in there doing kind of the origination of the planning, if you don't have somebody at the table that's going to help understand, like, okay, how is this organization going to operationalize this, right? That's where a lot of the challenges are met, because we have a goal that perhaps we can't meet for a number of reasons. So Kate, I'd love to hear your take on this as well. And then I'm going to add in a little bonus question here. In your advisory work, when you're talking with CIOs and CISOs, do you see any big changes happening over the next 3 to 4 years that they're going to be having to respond to that is also outside of the wheelhouse?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're witnessing a transformation of the role, to be honest with you. And I think it started a couple of years ago, and we're going to see a whole landscape change over the next 3-4 years. As we talked about, with the advent and acceleration of generative AI, with the new dependencies really coming out of the pandemic to now and even in the future of technology, the role of a CISO has gone from, somebody that was very focused on security from a technology perspective to a business role, now to a risk role. And so as we see that transition happen, I actually am not using the term CISO much anymore. I'm using the term risk executive, because you're seeing, not only do them have responsibility for technology decisions, but also for compliance, for looking holistically at business risk. Cyber now has a component in every area a board thinks about. I used to say every area but climate, but a woman way smarter than me proved me wrong on that. So reputational damage, operational, everything across the board is something that a CISO has to think about. So you're going to see the role expand. You're going to see the role actually, to some degree, bifurcate, where you're now seeing organizations have trust officers, digital officers, risk officers, CISOs, CSOs, because it's really almost untenable for one human to do all of these different things. So as this continues, we're going to see the role and the people that, kind of naturally gravitate towards more of the compliance area, the business risk, the technology, kind of start to slot into those new things that are joining. You talk about the board and, the need to have cyber excellence on the board. And what we're starting to see too is we've seen now 2 or 3 times as part of kind of the package of, in essence, fines or remediation asks when, there's some type of breach in the SEC or the FTC comes in and does the fines. We're now seeing companies actually have to put cyber experts on boards. And so one of the areas we're focusing on in advisory practice is how do we make sure that the people that are going into the boards for that kind of work are accredited, have the right skill set, are backed by insurance, so that we have the right people standing as a second chair to the CISO to help them with those decisions, but also build credibility from a board perspective.
Yeah, that's such a great point, Kate. And I think that, the long tail of that is so much around changing the types of roles that are essentially in the industry, because when you're dealing with changing in governance and compliance, even just responding to that takes away from the strategic vision and really driving things forward. Erik, are you kind of seeing the same thing from your seat?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously, I think it's really interesting just seeing the whole evolution of security. Back when I started, and I'll age myself a little, but it was, airport security was sort of the thing, right? It was good enough. You kind of let everyone take their watch off and their belt off and do a little dance in a machine and walk inside the feudal kingdom. And then inside, they could kind of do whatever they wanted. And everyone thought it was great because we had a big wall around it, right? And as long as it's contained, we're good. And now, you see how this thing has evolved from something that was almost looked at one point like this is a technical thing. This is sort of IT basement, and it's come up and it's gone from reporting into the head of legal to now the CIOs or the CTOs to having its own seat at the table in the boardroom as part of a business. Because the whole point is, for years everyone said, okay, well, we're a technology company, and they were in, you name the industry, it didn't really matter. Everyone always wanted to be a technology company, but I don't think what they understood was that by saying that and by actually going and doing that, you take on different risks, and business risk becomes technology risk at that point. So the minute you intermingle, you commingle those things, right? It's like, now you've just upped the game and upped the stakes for it. And I think because of that, no one really anticipated the pace at which this would take off. And I think, right now we, to Kate's point, right, we have board of directors, everyone's trying to get their arms around it. I've sat in a number of different types of meetings with, chief risk officers of banks and things, where they're just trying to understand, they're so focused on 2 things really. Okay. Do we have the right people inside? And generally they go, well, there's just not enough. That's one concern. And then the other thing is they go, okay, and then we do all this business with 3rd and 4th parties. And, to Kate's conversation, even around, cyber insurance and that whole, I mean, that's a whole nother thing. But we start thinking about that, like, who are we doing business with now? And if I'm a major corporation and I have all this pull and I have money and everything, what about this third-party software vendor? Who are they hiring to secure their environments? And then you start thinking about it, and you're like, wow. So there's this whole, the war on talent, and for talent's winning on that war, and everyone's trying to figure out, okay, how do I get the right people? How do I have the right environment? How do I get the right advice? Who do I partner with? And all of this is coming together, and what it's doing to that role is just it's putting it into this. It's becoming a business role, and then because of that, they have to start to break that down. It's like I have operational risk, I have IT risk, I have all the different pieces. So they're trying to segment it out. I don't know where it goes though, right? Because that's the bigger question is like where does this go? Because one of the things I think we found specifically, if you look at the patterns for security teams were always built originally on like teams and tools, right? So I have a team solving one problem here and a tool with that, and a team and a tool and a team and a tool. And now for our idea is, okay, well, we're going to segment the risk and have different types of heads to that risk. Unfortunately, you go, well, okay, now we have to kind of bring it all together. Like Tanium, we spend a lot of our time, we're bringing operations and security together in a platform. We're trying to bridge that gap because visibility has to be universal. It has to be common. You have to have a common language, right? I'm curious to see, what becomes the common language in that space. I almost love to, I don't know, Kate, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well, because I know this is kind of stuff that Kate and I will sit down with a coffee and then we'll look at the watch and it'll be like late in the afternoon.
We've had these conversations, my friend, and it's interesting. So I'm sitting here wanting to jump in, and you're exactly right. And I think what I see going on is, I was at our customer advisory board a couple of weeks ago, and it was apparent in the room that the non-CISOs, there's a fatigue around cyber right now about how much we spend. Is the protection worth it? How do we continue to in essence, drive defense out of what we accomplish? And to your point, what I'm seeing, and we've had long talks about this, is the walls are crumbling down, from IT, OT, security, technology, the roles, everything's coming into this, what I call, again, this digital world. And so as we see we kind of shed these roles and think about, to your point, cyber has to be built into everything we do, supply chain, the technology decisions. It's all now coming together. And what's interesting to me is, and having known Tanium for, oh my gosh, over 10 years now, is I get questioned a lot. Is Tanium really a security company more? Is it an operation company? Is it this, that? And I really see that as being on the bleeding edge of what we're seeing from these walls coming down. We're no longer one specific type of risk executive. We live in a risky world, and we address technology in different ways to help enable the business. And I think that's one of the valuable things about our partnership is, as we build, operational resilience, recovery, response solutions for our customers in this concept of cyber resilience, it really is technology resilience. And that's where partnerships like Tanium become so critical.
Yeah, Kate, it's so refreshing to hear you and Erik approach it from this perspective where it's not just technology, it's people and process, because we know that all of those things need to come together for a successful solution to be rolled out. Erik, just to talk a little bit, to double click on the technology piece, you guys are doing some really interesting things at Tanium. Can you talk to me about what you're seeing as far as your advancements that you think are driving the most impact?
Sure. Yeah, no. So, it's interesting because I've been at Tanium a little over 3 years. I'm in my, I guess it's year 4 now. And when I came to Tanium, I was looking at other security companies and I was looking at other options at the time. And when I saw it, it was kind of mind blowing for me, because to the point around the feudal kingdom, I was always like, well, we keep trying to do things this old way. And I look at Tanium and I go, this is like the, guerrilla warfare fighter, because that's the way everything is, right? It's all out there. Like I think about how businesses expand, right? Businesses no longer grow at the core, they grow at the edge. That's why the M&A conversation is so relevant. And boards are so, boards get more and more nervous. It's like, why? Because, when I talk to CISOs and CIOs, they go like, the bigger a business gets, I don't feel like the table has edges anymore. I can't grab that edge. And because of that, I started looking at Tanium. I'm like, well, maybe you don't need to grab the edge, you just need to know where it is. And that's that starting point. Like I said, for Tanium, technological advancement, that the first thing I'll say is I'm amazed at the level of innovation and just the commitment that our leadership team has to, we will never stop investing in innovation. That's like full safety. Dan Streetman will come out. He's like, first commitment to our customer, we will continue to invest in innovation. And that's first and foremost. Our roadmap will drive that. The next space that we start to think about, obviously for us, is what we call AEM, or autonomous endpoint management. And the longer term vision of that, we really want to get a customer to where there's almost this self-healing environment on the endpoint. But what goes into that? There's a lot that goes into that. So we have a very big, robust platform. Obviously, it's best in class for bringing security operations together. We think about it from the perspective of being able to, asset management, hygiene, all these types of good aspects that start to drive your technical debt profile down, right? So we take that, which drives your technical debt, which drives your risk, which ultimately leads to where all the doors and windows and everything are open for attackers. So what it's doing is it's combining these elements and through the visibility, bringing them all together. For us, though, what it's really doing is, innovation wise, because we're not a database, because we actually can query, hundreds of thousands or millions of endpoints in real time in seconds, it makes it the perfect platform for developing that, taking the customer on that artificial intelligence or automation journey, right? Because you can't do AI on stale data. It has to be, right? You make your decisions. We think of adaptive controls in cars. You're not going to make a lane change on data from 10 minutes ago. You want to know, what's happening right now. So when we start to think about that, with this new, our direction right now is all around automation. So automate's the first step in this, but what that's going to do is we want to provide our customers with good decision-making, automated playbooks. So can we start to standardize certain processes that are going to help your business be more resilient? Things like patch automation or compliance automation. We can start to look at those elements and then start to look at, automation of deployments, things like that. And we do this in a very secure manner. So what we're doing is we're guiding our customers by providing confidence scores so they understand, okay, what is the risk involved? So AI is going to take the data, start to look at it, and before those adaptive controls, right? If you make this type of change, here's how certain we are that, it is going to be successful. Allow them to make the decisions on that. And then when we deploy that, we use a ring-based deployment model. And what that's going to do is allow for, safety and security, go through a series of stage gates so that it's not just let it rip and spray and pray, as we used to say, start to look at it more control. So I think for us right now is, we're doubling down and really working on this journey of autonomous endpoint management is at the forefront. And for us, it's all about the customer journey. It's how do we take customers? How do we continue to develop the platform that can do things like, endpoint diversity? You need to be on every endpoint. So adding more endpoints, adding more capability, adding more in terms of ability to grab that edge and make sense of the edge, and then drive levels of automation that provide a secure environment for our customers and a high degree of certainty for them.
Yeah, Erik, I think it's really incredible when we think about the partnership that we have with Tanium and kind of like the bigger story around it that we focus on at WWT. So, Kate, I want to talk with you just a little bit about kind of your perspective on how you look at the bigger picture when we're partnering with Tanium and really delivering some pretty amazing customer.
It's interesting when we talk about the partnership with Tanium because, Erik, I don't know if you know this, that Tanium's the reason I got to know Worldwide Technology, WWT. Did you know that?
No, I did not know that.
Yeah.
Today? Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. So I've had a profound love for Tanium for a number of years, but Tanium actually was a partner with an early stage company that I was a part of. And years ago, we leveraged Worldwide Technologies Advanced Technology Center to help showcase the integration between Tanium in the early stage to WWT customers. And so it's how I became familiar with WWT, how I became familiar with Tanium, and it allowed us to accelerate our go-to-market with large banks because we were able to use the ATC to do on-demand labs, which I checked are still available today for customers that want to see Tanium. And we're able to showcase and do proof of concepts without ever having to go into the customer environment. It allowed us to demonstrate the depth of the Tanium portfolio, how they worked with early stage to leverage new innovation technologies, and how we were able to couple that with Worldwide. The Tanium partnership for us today, I think, is a great example, like we talked about, Tracy, of where we're headed from a cyber resilience perspective. We look at how our customers are trying to do more with less. And what I mean by that is, as we bring in AI, as we think about our integrations with organizations like ServiceNow, as we think about technology holistically across the platform, Tanium is one of the great examples of an organization that leveraging different modules can impact multiple areas in a business's resilience strategy. Whether it's thinking about it from an incident response perspective, whether it's thinking about it from an operational resilience perspective, Tanium is able to not only help upskill and uplevel the technology organizations have, but leveraging Worldwide's ability to look at those labs in the ATC allows customers to really play with that partnership without having to install it in their environment or to put new things in until they know it's really possible. And Erik and I were joking about having a cup of coffee and talking about where we're going to take the world, but it's awesome to see a partner that leans in with you to understand where the industry is going. He talked about, and I was laughing when he mentioned cyber insurance, because Erik's heard my talk track on cyber insurance, I don't know, what, 10, 15 times now, probably?
Somewhere
Maybe.
there.
Somewhere.
Somewhere around there.
I laughed because he's like conditioned. You hadn't even asked me a question, Tracy, about cyber insurance, and he's already off to the races with my talks. And the reality is that the fact that you can have a partnership as open and as collaborative as WWT has with Tanium, it allows us to look at the market and go, okay, how do we help? And what we're talking about with the cyber insurance market is, how do we help automate the cyber insurance application process? How do we get attestation from human error to more of an automated process? And being able to work with partners on ideas and concepts that have the ability to change where we had as an industry is one of the reasons I think this partnership is so valuable.
Yeah, spot on, Kate. It is really amazing. I mean, even just lightly touching on some of the points you hit, just the ability for that validation. And when you talked about it kind of in the perspective of Tanium in concert with other technologies, we know that that's so important and really at the forefront of most of what our customers are grappling with when it comes to operationalization. Erik, can you talk to us a little bit about that angle, especially around technology partnerships and successful adoption?
Well, I mean, so when you're in a company, especially on the software side, right, and you're in a state of hyper growth. So this is actually my third company that I've been in, but this is an unusual company from a number of perspectives. I think if I look at how we're approaching this, it's a very deliberate. So we talk about, we want to win by design. We want our customers to win by design, and what our customers are coming to us and for is they're really asking one big thing. I've invested all this money in technology and I can't unlock any value from it. And how do you help me to do this? And this is where partners come in, right? And the funny thing is customers, and I say this often, you're right. A lot of technology companies, they interface with their customers and they kind of act their way through it. And I would say customers want to hear from experts, not actors. And when I work with WWT, this partnership, when I look at where we are, right, the collaboration from our CEO, Dan Streetman, right on down through the company, this is, we're not just pairing off, to have nice words. And we're pairing off because our interest is aligned, right? The alignment of interest is around, presenting combined experts in different areas to our customers, right? We are going to be solutioning experts. We are going to help a customer unlock more value from the investments that they've made, not just in Tanium or in our technology, but with the breadth that WWT has, we can start to help unlock more value from all their investments, right? Let's look at the portfolio. Let's look at the business problems we're trying to solve and start to figure out what is the best way to go after this. And then, for us as a company, we have big ambitions, as we all do, right? We're in a state of hypergrowth, and it's an amazing place to be. Everyone talks about the rocket ship. When you're on the rocket ship, the ride is not always it's a bumpy ride, and I always look at this as, you don't do this without partners. We cannot grow because our focus, again, right? What is our focus? We continue to put our focus on innovation. We are going to create the best software. We're going to be the most innovative group. We are going to work with our customers, understand their problems, and drive that innovation with them. And having partners like WWT is what's going to help us really deliver that and keep that promise to our customers. We can't do it alone. So
You had to mention the rocket ship. That makes me laugh every single time. Yeah, the rocket ship. Yeah, you and I have had lots of laughs about the rocket ship. But Tracy, to Erik's point, we talk a lot about being secure altogether. And when we look at the holistic portfolio of WWT, we are a technology company by foundation. We have made amazing strides in what we do in both cyber and AI, because if we're providing the technology, we should be able to secure it and we should be able to innovate it. And what I see with this partnership, rocket ship aside, is the ability for us to have a holistic partner that can impact and help make that journey possible across all areas of innovation for a customer. That's what I see.
Yeah, Kate, I mean, this partnership that we have, it's hard to not talk about how great it is, because when we look at it from not only the way that we look at technology, and just to hear you guys talk, we know that you guys are customer centric. You're sitting in their seats, you're thinking about how they solve problems. But then I look at the people that make up the organizations, and knowing both of you, Kate and Erik, I know that there's a huge culture connection here. So one of the next things I wanted to kind of chat with you both about, because I know you're both super involved in the cyber community and really bringing new folks into it. I just want to hear kind of from you, Erik, first, just kind of what your take is on how do we bring new folks into the market, and what does that mean to you?
I mean, so you have to get involved. So for me, one of my, so a little bit more about me. I don't really look at, my success is really other people's success. And that's why I love my job. I love my job because I love seeing customers see success. I love seeing the person that I've been working with for the last year get promoted. I love seeing, what I love when they call and they say, yeah, we had this massive audit. We killed it. It was great. Anything, right? But to that point, that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen in a moment. It doesn't happen overnight. And so where I always put the value is in that next generation, right? I believe in internship programs heavily. I look at, in the course of my career, I've had cohorts of interns who are now, in the C-suite and are running major companies. And I still talk to them to this day, and they still call me. I don't know why they call me for advice anymore. But they do. And it's one of those things where, I start looking at that. There has to be, I think, because of the way this is, unfolding, I think all of us as security professionals and CIOs, and you have to pay this forward. If everyone doesn't take that social responsibility, and it's not to one person, it's to your customer, it's to the next generation. It's going, I'm on board at NJIT. I go and I work and I talk there, and I do things at the university, lecture. And I know Kate, we're kind of, it's like, if you look at Kate, she's all over, but it takes that, it takes a lot of energy and it takes a lot of commitment. And you got to believe that, we're going to have to pay this one forward if we're going to get the exponential growth that we need in the industry to really make it.
For me, this is, it's not a career. It's one of the three loves of my life, and that's the nature of it. This was never, it's been almost, well, over 25 years, almost 30 years now. And cyber and the community is who I am as a human. I'm laughing because I have cyber elephant in the boardroom and rewired AI sitting right next to me. It never really leaves. My kid is called Zero Trust. But to your point, Tracy, it's not a question about, giving back or doing, intentionally this, that, or the other. And Erik and I have had talks about this. Like, Erik and I have mentored each other. Let's be honest about it. Like, that's one of the things that makes this industry so great. I love helping people develop their superpowers. And to me, everyone has superpowers, and this industry needs a lot of superheroes. So if I can help guide people in the right direction, if somebody gets inspiration off my sometimes bumpy path, let's be honest, everybody succeeds, everybody fails. And I'm very open and honest about what's gone right and what's not necessarily gone right in my career. But to Erik's point, the biggest measure for me of what makes me just get up in the morning is when I get those phone calls that somebody that I've worked with has gotten a promotion or started a new thing or, done something that's helped the community. And that's what makes it just amazing. My life is to make this world a safer place. That's what I've given my life to do. And when I see people, lean in and do it, sometimes I make mistakes, sometimes I get it right, but it's a question of helping everyone on the journey together.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing, Kate. And I think that, when I look at, the way that you guys interact with the community, being able to be in a leadership position and offer like a really transparent honesty that you guys both really give off, I think it does make this feel so much more accessible and relatable. And I think that everyone's kind of on a different part of their journey. So it's really amazing to see how you guys are really giving back and engaging. Yeah. So before we end this has been such a wonderful conversation, by the way. I really loved all of your insights. I would love for you guys each to leave our listeners with 2 to 3 actionable things that they can start thinking about as they tackle this new landscape. So Erik, I'll let you kick that off.
Oh boy, 2 to 3. I mean, the first thing that always comes to mind, you want to start thinking about simplification, and you have to start looking at technologies that are transformational and that simplify your landscape. So think about things like if we're really going to be transformational, interoperability, portability, all these words, it has to be driving in that direction. So that would be the first thing, right? Take a different type of look at the landscape and start to really hone in on that. The other thing I would say is, you're going to have to embrace this change and the accountability if we're going to start driving standards. I think right now, what industries are really, everyone's flailing around. I think it's time, my advice is, be a leader. Industries need leaders now. Industries need collaboration. They need to come together because we're going to have to start creating the new standards. I think we've crossed over a lot of the CIOs and CISOs I talk to. They say, this is the year of accountability, and it's kind of the first time we've talked about it, right? But now it's becoming real. So I think in order to it's like when you want to lose weight, right? What's the best way to do it? Get a partner to help you be accountable. So I think make sure you're partnering with the right people. Make sure that they're vested in your roadmap and in your success. And we need to challenge each other, hold each other accountable as we go forward. So
yeah, thanks so much, Erik. Kate, can I get your thoughts?
When I think about what we should leave the audience with is 3 things. One, partnerships and trust are really critical. And so, like Erik and I have been talking about, as we approach a brave new world, as we think about the acceleration of change, ensuring that you have trusted advisors from a board level all the way down to the practitioner to help us understand and rationalize the technology that's coming into this environment is critical. Second thing is remember people, process, and technology. Everyone has a role to play in cyber today. Everyone has a role to play in digital risk. And so making sure they're on the journey and they understand both the positive and the negative benefits of the technologies we're bringing in, or the operational risk, I should say, not the negative benefits. That's super important. And the third is embrace the change. It's coming. We're going to have to look at how technology impacts every area from a business and a consumer perspective. The new generation, you've seen Zero Trust Baby mentioned a couple of times here. He's going to grow up in a world where AI is not something new and revolutionary. It's a way of life. And so the foundations, the partnerships, the underlying hygiene, the technology we put in place to ensure that that world is cyber safe is super, super critical. I want to thank Erik. We've been joking around a bit, but the reality is that the Tanium WWT partnership is a great example of how we do try and secure the world better together. And I appreciate the innovation, the partnership across the entire Tanium team, and what it allows us to do in this market. Thank you. And thank you, Tracy, for being an awesome host.
Yeah. Thank you. And thank you, Kate and Tracy. I mean, this has been, Kate, obviously we have a relationship and it's going to continue. And I think it's going to strengthen through through our partnership. We have a lot of work to do, I guess, this next year. And Tracy, I think this is kind of, the kickoff, right? For everything that's ahead. We have a lot of work to do together. I'm really excited to have partners like WWT, and it comes down to the people, right? So, I think we're going to do some really great things together. I'm really excited for the year ahead and beyond.
Oh, well, thank you both so much. It means a ton to have you on, Erik and Kate. I love hearing your insights always. So I think we have a pretty awesome team gathered here to start making some impact as we continue to even do more together. So just thank you both so much for being on Meet the Chief, and we'll see you in the field.
Perfect.